Alright, well, the Zimmerman trial today, I felt nauseous today. I had to take the afternoon off, but I got a lot of stuff done in the beginning of the day. I couldn't program today on my map or anything. Just didn't feel good. But I managed to waste time on the computer and watch, I think, all of the Zimmerman trial today. And the redirect on Serena was better. There was some pointing out of things like the arms getting spread out. I'm still, like, it doesn't mean yesterday wasn't a disaster and missed opportunity. I think so. Of course, I'm no lawyer, I'm just an observer. And I do often, in this case, unlike other things, find out that I'll have missed the whole point because there's a lot of weird, like, traditions or, like, weird rules, like, on what is really considered leading or not, or it's easy to forget these things were allowed in, or which parts did they decide to redact of this and that. But yeah, no, I haven't changed my opinion about yesterday. But today was a little better. I mean, they had the expert on from the state's medical examiner saying how minor the wounds were. Because that's also, I think that's supposed to be crucial from what I understand as the fallback. That he doesn't get murder 2, but he gets manslaughter. In other words, okay, murder 2, he had to kind of want to kill Trayvon, but manslaughter, if let's say he really thought that his life was in danger, and so he killed Trayvon, but the jury thinks but his life was nowhere near in danger, then my understanding, there was some people saying this, so I don't really know. This is like I'm saying, who knows with this stuff. But my understanding is then that goes more towards the manslaughter thing. So, in other words, if he killed Trayvon because he honestly is a scared little poodle dog that thought he was about to die, but he was so horribly wrong that it's ridiculous, that's still manslaughter. And I think really it's obvious that he didn't think, I'm going to kill somebody tonight. I think he wanted to apprehend someone, would be my personal guess at least. And that is somewhere between manslaughter and murder 2, meaning it could be one or the other, the full interval. But yeah, it also means that it's at the edge proving that there was this intentionality, right? And we discuss all this stuff here when we're discussing free will. I mean, the way we talk about things, we're knowledgeable enough to know that of course it's ridiculous to try to read Zimmerman's mind. As a matter of fact, I worked for an astronomy professor when I was in college. Who he told me, he's like, I never serve on a jury because every time I get called, I go down there and I tell them I can't read people's minds. I can tell you what their behavior was, what I think they did. I can't tell you what their intent is, and the law is based on intent, or the punishment, the actual law of the crime, of what kind of crime it was. So there's an inherent ridiculousness there, right? Like, the jury is going to be asked to decide what attitude Zimmerman had when he went down in there, and they are allowed to guess what happened based on the part of the attitude that they think that they have figured out from the parts they do know. And the whole reasonable doubt thing is like, that's just an opening of these 6 people get to decide, well, like if it was 6 people with my way of looking at things, even if I hadn't followed the case, I mean, I'd go in there and I'd go, well, look, he followed and he said fucking punks, and he obviously had an attitude, and he followed him, and then he killed him. That's at least manslaughter. On the other hand, other people could think differently. That's the way the system works. And it's imperfect, but on the other hand, if you had this more ideal version of, you can't read people's minds, so what do you punish? Well, I think there's an answer to that. I mean, I think basically my attitude is like, if you follow someone you think is a criminal, like, and or even allow yourself to accidentally follow them looking for addresses in the direction they went, then you're taking a risk. I mean, my ideal system, you'd automatically have a trial. it might be obvious. Like if the person was in your house and armed, should be pretty obvious. Maybe the trial would consist of the judge going, well, this is obvious. Or if you had to have a jury trial, then the jury would it'd be a 3-day trial. But in a case like this, I'd expect it to be, somewhat difficult in my ideal system. And really, in my ideal system, he was following him. He provoked him. And that's manslaughter. That's like, sorry, that death was not rightful. But I had reason to think it was rightful at the time. Okay, that's why it might not be murder. So, I'm not for stringing Zimmerman up or making some bigger deal out of it. It's an interesting case. It has cultural impact for us because of the nature of the culture we're in the U.S. And I'd just like to see it, worked out. And if Zimmerman gets off, I don't have to say that that's a justice, but I will respect that, right? I'm not the kind of person that thinks, oh, well, now we should go vigilante on whomever got off, whatever. So, it's the system that we have. But anyway, the prosecution seemed to do better today, but it didn't really make up for how bad the Monday was and what a ruined opportunity. It has occurred to me that maybe they knew that Serena would be hostile, right? So that if they actually talked to him more and direct, that he would have, by fighting with them, made it look even worse. But why would they show all of Zimmerman's statement? That I don't get. Maybe just because they want to put up 100 things so that they're all open doors and can be spoken of later. Maybe like filling the sky with flak so that you can't tell where the target is or something. I really don't get. I don't. When I was younger, you think the people you have faith that they're on the side you support, you're like, well, they're probably just really smart, 12-dimensional chess. I've never found that to be true. They're usually, if they look stupid, they're just acting stupid. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of faith at this point. But I do think that, in a sense, all they have to do to be competent, the prosecution, is put enough evidence up there that the jury, who gets to look at the evidence and review it over and over, as far as I understand, they can go to anything entered as evidence and look at it when they're deliberating. If they're smart or what their attitude is, matters. And if they're smart, then the information is still there. They have sufficient information. It's going to be on the record, I think. But, yeah. So, basically, the prosecution did not fuck up as bad, in my opinion, as they did yesterday. But I'm still wondering where this is going, and I guess there maybe, a lot is going to ride on the closing statement, which you wonder who's going to do the closing statement, because Bernie is not the most eloquent person. That one guy that did the opening statement is probably the best person to do the closing statement, and that balding, funny, smirky guy, kind of like him, but again, I wouldn't have him do the closing statement. And on the closing statement, the only way that could redeem them is these boring plots. Here's the neighborhood, another sticker. Oops, I forgot the sticker. Let me there's the sticker. All of this stuff. That is only worthwhile if in the closing statement somebody's going, remember this thing we made? Look, boom, 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 look, he's guilty, And I just don't have a big confidence that they're going to pull off that. Whereas I do think O'Mara and West are going to pull off their presentation materials have been better and more clear, and have a direct purpose. So you just think that they're probably going to do a good job at their version of sewing it up. And a lot of people talk about how, well, it's just reasonable doubt. Well, I don't see it that way. Basically, reasonable doubt is a pretty subjective thing. It's in the minds of the jury. So it does come down to, at the end, and how they close their argument. affects whether the jury looks at there being reason. Whether if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. Whether that has any impact on a jury, a statement like that, depends on, the case. That's the interesting thing about it. Good or bad, whether it works or not. I mean, you have this body of content that is an experience of people having to listen to this as if it was a full-time job for weeks or months in some cases. They go on that. And whether or not something clicks with them. Yeah, the glove was really significant. It didn't fit. That was supposed to fit. And there's a drama to building it up of whether something should or should not make sense. So here we have a very fine line because we have so many witnesses, but a little bit of a void around the part that's supposed to be important according to Florida law, which shows how Florida law is stupid. But that's still the law. So it could go any way, but I personally don't see how less than manslaughter makes sense. But, and I do think it should be murder too, in my understanding of it, in the sense that, yeah, I think he went around there thinking he was following a dangerous person with nothing but a gun, and he thought, well, I'll pull a gun, it's a magic wand, and I'll apprehend him, or whatever he thought. It's his fault. Right, so, but whatever, Florida gets to decide,